Well, if this one doesn't create a divide in the comment section, I don't know what will. Is it okay to do 80 miles an hour on the motorway as opposed to 70? This will be a discussion. Welcome back to the channel. So it's not very often that I criticize articles, but I'm respectfully going to do so on this occasion, but with good reason. Not because I entirely disagree with the reasoning behind the rationale within the article. There is some reasoning in there, but that doesn't mean that I agree with the overall conclusion. So I, as I often do, was browsing through different news bites and looking for things to put out on this channel. Usually something that's got something to do with law and something that we can all relate to, discuss and debate in the comment section down below. So I came across this article here in The Spectator. So nothing against the article or the author. I just don't agree with the overall conclusion. I do agree with some of the logic and the reasoning behind what I'm about to share with you. So feel free to check out the article and the website. Not sponsored, I hasten to add. But here we go. This is why it caught my attention. Why speeding is good for us. Now, even before reading the article, I could come to some sort of reasoning myself as to, yes, you know, that little bit of rush of excitement, adrenaline and everything else, which, as you'll find out, is really what the arguments rely on throughout this article. However, my concern with it, of course, is that this has a Gatso speed gun here and speed camera. And, of course, it relates to driving. Now, even, you know, spoiler alert, my conclusion is speeding on the roads is never a good thing. Debate that one in the comments rather than with me. But let's look at what it actually says within this article here. And I'm going to give you some counter arguments and you can debate it in the comments down below amongst yourselves, which I'll take great interest in reading. So it's quite a well-written article, intriguing and makes you think. And I think in a very clever way is making you think about the speed that you do on the roads, which is always a good thing. Education and discussion is always a good thing. But not if you walk away with the conclusion that, as the title would have you believe, that it is a good thing to speed now and again. It's not, by the way. But let's take a look at the arguments put forward here. Very nicely written, as I said. What's your go-to speed on the motorway? Do you snuffle along at 70, which is an interesting choice of words. Snuffle usually obviously referring to the noise made when someone's got a bit of a cold. Slowing down the lorries in your Rover 75. Now, there's a few things in there. There's obviously criticism of Rover 75 drivers. Notoriously reliable and steadfast and so on. But slowing down the lorries, I mean, I've got several things to pick out in this first sentence alone. Lorries shouldn't be doing 70 on the motorways anyway. So if a driver is going along at 70, they shouldn't be slowing down the lorries, despite the fact that all the way back from somewhere I went just a week or two ago, there were lorries in the outside lane. Which they shouldn't be either, by the way, on a 3-lane motorway anyway. So, you know, that's what I found. That's what happened. And sure enough, later on, police came hurtling down and pulled them over. But I digress. More likely, the article continues, you'll be cruising along in the middle lane just on the cusp of 80, forgive me, just on the wrong side of the law, plus 10% and then some. Now, just to touch on that point as well, which is a common point of misconception, is that people believe that there is a law. In fact, some even said that it was enshrined into legislation, which it isn't, that there is a 10% plus 2 rule across the United Kingdom. There is a 10% plus 2 sort of leeway guidance in some areas, which I've put out on videos before, but it is certainly not law. If you do 1 mile an hour above the speed limit, for the avoidance of doubt, you are in breach of the speed limit and you could be prosecuted for speeding, particularly if it's on the motorway, you're doing 71 even, or 72, let alone 80. Author quite boldly said, that's what I'd like to do. So whilst this is not, before some of you might jump up and say, prosecute, this is not, whilst it's a statement of what someone likes to do, it's not linked to a particular event, so there is no particular event to prosecute on. So the author is just about escaping liability there, along with 9 out of 10 of the other drivers I observe, which is probably fair, I suppose. I wouldn't say 9 out of 10. I'd say probably between 5 and 10 out of 10 that I observe are doing something between 70 and 80, and certainly not 70. But then it goes on. Perhaps you're one of those speed merchants in the grut-covered Beamer or a fly-drenched Audi. Insist on making the M4 a little autobahn, and then when no speed cameras are watching. Autobahn, for those that don't know, roads in Germany that I think, if I understand it correctly, have no actual speed limit, and you just get from A to B as quickly as you choose, and you take your risks. That's the joy of Britain's motorways, something for everybody. I will link this article in the description for you to go and take a look at. The overall conclusion, after coming through some discussion on human nature to be competitive and that drive of adrenaline, that little buzz of going a little bit outside of the law, a little bit faster than you're supposed to be going. But as I said, I'm going to give you some reasons why it's not a good idea, but an interesting article nonetheless. I will put you to 2 other articles to give you the counter argument to all of that. One, aptly titled, this is from riodrivingschool.co.uk. I'll link this in the description below as well. Is my 80 mile an hour worth it? And of course, it concludes no. It makes no sense at all, and for very good reason. Now, if we look at this little chart here, now before some people jump up in the comments and say, aha, but modern vehicles have got much better stopping power than they used to, and so on and so on and so on. That may well be the case, but as every vehicle is not the same, nor made equally, nor work as they always should, and with roads can be dry, can be wet, and everything in between, you really should have a standard to work to. And the standard we work to is going off standard stopping distances made up of thinking time, braking time, and overall stopping distance. You can also think of this as the time that it takes to slow down, and so on and so forth. 70 miles an hour, just actually comparing this with another one here, which is overall stopping distance of 348 feet. And this one here, this is feet per second traveling distance. So this is how fast you're going, and this will come back to in a minute, the overall stopping distances. So just thinking about this for a moment, feet per second. At 70 miles an hour, you're doing just over 100 feet a second. And at 80, I haven't checked the numbers. I'm sure someone will do that for me, but I trust reasonably that it's going to be accurate. 80 miles an hour, you're doing 15 feet more per second than you are at 70. So this is comparing any time saved with the distance that you're traveling and so on. But obviously fuel consumption will increase 20 to 25% from doing 80 as opposed to 70. And, there's a lengthy discussion. Again, like I said, I will link this in the description below as well for you to go and look at, including things such as various safety features in vehicles, airbags, and they're all designed to work at certain speeds and everything else. Now, moving to the time that it takes to stop, which really is the important bit, because if something goes wrong, you've got to stop, you've got time and distance to stop in. And even if the slightest of distractions, such as mobile phones, which a lot of people are guilty of, even the slightest of distraction is going to increase this by a magnitude of numbers. Now, this is assuming that you are paying proper attention. And as it says here, the table below distances, an average car come to a stop on a dry pavement from different speeds, including the distance traveled for 1 second and reaction time. So perception, reaction, distance. At 70, we're talking 103, as we just said, and 80, 117. The braking distance of 245 versus 320 feet at 80 miles an hour. Increasing the overall stopping distance by many car lengths. Now, those car lengths can be the difference between stopping just in time or slamming into several vehicles in front of you. Now, aside from the original arguments made here about some 9 out of 10 or whatever it is just on the cusp of 80 miles an hour as opposed to 70, and all the reasoning behind that, there is a very real difference in the stopping distance. Now, the bottom line of it is this, and I had this conversation with somebody this morning about something completely different, as to why speed is a very important thing in driving and the result of collisions. Now, obviously, not every collision is a result of speeding, but certainly speed is an impact factor on every collision. That is undoubtedly one of the significant factors, perhaps one of the most significant factors. Any statisticians in the house, hit me up in the comments and let me know what you think about that as well. But I will put to you that as counsel, we regularly do things, or used to regularly do certain hearings that you may never have heard of, unless, of course, you're involved in it, in which case then I'm sorry for you. But certain types of hearings are known as infant settlement hearings. And those are hearings where if there is an injury or worse to a child and the parties are trying to settle those claims for monetary damages as compensation for whatever's happened, they cannot reach an agreement without counsel's opinion and without it going to court for a judge to hear arguments from opposing counsel and their opinions really on what they say. Invariably, in my experience, opposing counsel tend to agree that there's not usually a huge distance between the numbers that counsel put forward to the court. But obviously there is some argument here and there. But nonetheless, those settlements cannot go forward, cannot go ahead until those hearings have happened. Now, until you've been in that position in the profession, as I am and other barristers have been, I suppose most barristers have done their share of infant settlement hearings, then going out and telling families this is what the court decided the injuries or worse to your child or children were worth in a sense of money. Until you've been through those hearings, either as counsel or dare I say it as members of the public going through those proceedings yourself, you will never fully realize and appreciate the impact that speed has on the roads and on collisions. Because obviously, as I said, speed is not necessarily the cause of every collision, but it is a factor in every collision, because every single vehicle involved in a collision is either stationary and hit by a moving vehicle, or is a moving vehicle hitting any other kind of vehicle. So the speed is automatically a factor. If there's no speed, there's no movement. There's no movement, there's no collision. So the speed of all these vehicles is a significant factor. So when I see articles that even tongue-in-cheek suggest that speeding is good for you and why, I respectfully, whilst I agree with the logic and the reasoning behind the article, I just wanted to make this video so that if anyone else sees articles like this and this one itself, I'm not hiding it away. I'm linking it in the description for you to go and read. But for the sole purpose that I would like to take this opportunity to explain to you why I disagree wholeheartedly that speeding on the roads is ever a good idea. So anyone that is justifying it, arguing it, please think about the comments that I've made in this video. As I said, it won't be without its debate as to 70 versus 80 and whether there's a lot of talk and discussion whether the limit should be raised to 80. I, for what it's worth, don't think that's going to happen, because if you raise it to 80, then as this article might suggest, most people, as this article suggests, 9 out of 10 will be over that amount by implication, and then on the cusp of 90. And then, of course, it's not just, well, if we go back to that article again, let's say, does it say, no, it doesn't have figures for 90. Does this one? I don't think this one does either. Yes, it does, in fact. So we go from what we are at the moment, feet per second traveling distance from 102 to 103, up to 146 if we go up to 100 miles an hour, 132 if we're at 90 miles an hour. So it's a significant difference. So there we are. I said this might divide the comment section. Do discuss it politely, respectfully among yourselves. You've got my thoughts. You've got my reasoning as to why those are my thoughts. And I'd encourage you to put yours in the description below. But bear in mind that even 1 mile an hour over the limit, whilst it probably wouldn't be prosecuted in most cases, it certainly is in some cases, and even 2 or 3 is regularly prosecuted over the limit because the limits are the limits. Make sure you subscribe, come back for another video because I'm going to be talking about whether or not 20 miles an hour is a real speed limit and whether that is enforceable or not. So make sure you like this video and subscribe, come back for that one. And in the meantime, I thank you for your kind attention and I thank you for watching, and join us next time.